AIT, sharing the African experience.
I think that in a nutshell is ongoing.
Addressed to Nigerians. How many meter asset providers have you licensed? And when are they supposed to start getting their meters? Because you have to license them.
For the meter provider now, we've received over, I think, 40 or so, no objection that I have signed. And of course, we believe that...
have you licensed 40?
No objection has been given.
No, license is the question I asked you. Next chairman, license, please. Talk to the Nigerian people.
Well, the meter appropriation asset that we just put together, we have just been in place, and over 50 has been licensed so far. Fair zero.
You've licensed 50?
Yes.
When are they supposed to start deploying meters?
Just 2 weeks ago, we actually visited the meter plant manufacturing companies in Lagos, and I think they are already rolling them out right as we talk.
Chairman, the meters in the plants, I've seen enough of them. The place where Nigerians want the meters is in their shops, in their offices, and in their homes.
Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, and the chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC, Professor James Adeche Momo, over the vexed issue of metering of electricity consumers, for which the Nigerian government in 2017 alone granted 39 billion naira bailout to electricity distribution companies in the country. This public show by the ministry and the regulator is only characteristic of the crisis in the country's power sector. It is true that metering of electricity consumers remains one major issue, trailing the controversial estimated bills by electricity distribution companies. But it is also true that electricity consumers who are already metered in Nigeria also pay one of the highest electricity tariffs in the world. The biggest issue, therefore, is the country's continuous overdependence on internationally priced gas to generate power for distribution across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The other emerging challenge is the national transmission grid that has collapsed and thrown the entire country into total darkness 151 times in the last 9 years of 2008 to 2017, and 9 times and counting already in the first 7 months of 2018.
Over the years, if not for until recent, the grid, lots of this infrastructure were built over 40 years ago. You understand what I'm saying? And they are extremely weak. Decadence of weak grid infrastructure and the associated infrastructure, that's, the spinning reserve and what have you. So now we have a threshold of limit with which we peak load. If we decide to peak 6,000 megawatts, the grid will collapse. Like now, the problem we have is that the grid is not ideal, it's not always too good in any client to manage. The cost of managing the grid is a problem. Because once there's a loss of, there's a challenge in any part of the country, every power station will have to shut down because the load will be shifted and you will not have national outage.
Nobody is asking questions. Why? Can we think or can we change? Nobody. So that is one of the issues. So coming back to your question on if this central grid system is international best practice. I can tell you that it is not being practiced everywhere. In fact, for example, the US, you know that our state system was borrowed from the United States of America. Do you know that each of the states have their own electricity board, electricity regulatory commission, and everything state-based? And so there is no way that they can put one national grid at Washington to be coordinating all the about 50 states. It's not possible. That's just an example. But even if, let's say, it works there, in Nigeria we have tried it. Look at from pre-privatization time till now. Post-privatization, we're already nearly 5 years. It's not working. So we need to think outside the box. And if you ask me, regional grid is the best.
So if we are talking about regional grid, as it were, can the power generation companies also, do they have the capacity to deliver in those areas? Because I'm trying to remember if we have a power generating plant in the northwest, for instance.
The fact that we don't have gas to power plants in the northwest or hydro power plants in the northwest does not preclude them from having other sources of power, like solar.
But are we investing in those areas?
If we're investing in solar?
Yes, the power mix, for instance.
Well, the government is promoting it a lot, and a lot of donor agencies are funding that. I'm aware of that. USAID, Power Africa, a lot of these companies are
stand alone for small communities. So that's what we're seeing.
Well, I looked at NBET's website and I saw that NBET has signed 14 solar PPAs. And if they've signed, I think most of those solar PPAs are sited in the north. I can't for sure tell you if it is in the northwest or north or northeast or north central, but is sited in the north, majority of them. And if that be the case, they are on-grid plants.
I understand what you are saying. What you are saying, like now, Kainji Jeba Hydro, if they can be closer to Kwara, Kogi, Niger, Kebbi, Sokoto. But my question here is that, can those state load demand equal to what is being generated in that region? There must be an excess. Issue of affordability too is there. The issue of affordability is number one. Because now, take for instance, in my own zone, you know, it's a region ravaged by Boko Haram insurgents, and the poverty level is on the top among the region. Now you push this power. Maybe monthly, MBET is billing me this. MO willing charge is this. Now, customers wants to get power, but they can't afford that power. How do I?
Is that not an assumption?
It's not. It's a reality. It's a reality.
I think there's some presupposition of that in the Act and the work that NEC started doing, which essentially maybe it starts with transmission network of Nigeria. So the disco goes no problem with unbundling. I mean, only thing to do is energy allocation. There are some companies in this country, some part of this country that have no generating assets and such. So if you regionalize the generation, it might be a problem of lack of access to power on one side, which creates social exclusion, contrary to the chapter of the Constitution. But beyond that, inside the transmission, so people are saying regional grid. So can you western grid, northern grid, southern, eastern grid? So if you do that, and that could go well with concession or privatization. So if you bring the grids in that sense, then you can get different companies to run the transmission network. So you have a country that's concession to drive western transmission network, another company commission or concession to drive eastern. So it does three things. First and foremost, it brings the grid to perhaps a much more manageable proportion so that people can focus on developing the grids assigned to them, manage them. So competence span of control. And that, interestingly, might now kind of align with the quest for regionalization structurally, because the whole idea is to create much more subsidiarity, much more lower level of control, lower level of ownership, lower level of expertise, so that people can really develop and not be drawn back. And then, like I said, it means that we can now much more localize outages. There's a system collapse, it could not, maybe in the Western grid, it might be. So this is part of decentralizing power. It also incentivizes, generation plants that come up within zones as well. But there could be, you need to map out the socioeconomic cost in terms of exclusion, access to energy. Energy is critical for development.
This is Straight Talk. I am Tyav in Abuja, and we welcome all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the program. You can also join me in the conversation on my online platforms on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn, with all the handles on the webpage of our partners, MediaDimensions.live. The Nigerian government, through the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, hardly admits that the collapse of the infamous national grid, which is a major value chain in the power sector, has become not just a regular occurrence, but an embarrassment to the entire country and remains a major national security risk. Over the years, it takes the pressure of frantic inquiries from journalists for the TCN that manages the 330 kV national transmission grid to own up and admit that there has been system collapse, even when generation and distribution companies are already in the public with the reports. Here is what we know about the record of system collapse in the country in the last 10 years from 2008 to 2018. Between January and July 2018, there were 9 incidents of system collapse, with January witnessing 5, 2 in April, and 1 each in June and July, experiencing the most recent on the 8th day of the month. In 2017, there was a total of 24 incidents of system collapse, with 2 said to be partial shutdown. The TCN log records on system collapse show that 2016 recorded 28 incidents, with 22 being total shutdown. 2015 had the lowest shutdown in the last 10 years, with 10 incidents, with the preceding year, 2014, recording 13 incidents of system collapse. In 2013 and 2012, Nigeria recorded 48 incidents of system collapse, with 24 in each year. However, there were 22 total shutdowns in 2013 and then 16 in 2012. The data show that there were 19 incidents in 2011 and 2010, having the single highest shutdown in a single year, recording 42 incidents in 12 months. With 19 incidents of total system collapse in 2009, there were 20 other partial shutdown in that year. 2008 did start on a very disturbing note, with 6 incidents recorded within the first 8 days of the year. The situation is reported to have been worse before 2008, with an average of 35 incidents of system collapse every year and 52 incidents in 2003 alone. We have requested the Transmission Company of Nigeria, that is the TCN, that shares the same office building with the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing in Maitama district of the nation's capital, to address the issues raised, but the organization will simply not talk. Incorporated in November of 2005 with the unbundling of the infamous National Electric Power Authority, NEPA, under the Electric Power Sector Reform EPSR Act 2005. The TCN was in 2012 contracted out to the Canadian management firm Nomitoba Hydro International for a 3-year base period. The controversial management contract was renewed for 1 year in 2012 before it was finally terminated in 2016.
Manitoba Hydro?
Yes.
That is a very controversial thing that if we start talking about it, it will not end. But I can sit here and categorically tell you that that contract failed because 70% of the failure was attributed to us Nigerians. 70% of the failure of that contract was as a result of our doing, the Nigerian factor.
What Nigeria cannot forget about is the routine incidents of system collapse of the national grid, and most painfully, the failure to transmit for distribution all the 7,000 megawatts of electricity that the Nigerian government often celebrates have been generated in the country. As we speak, out of the 7,000 megawatts of electricity reportedly generated at any given time, the country has the capacity to deliver only about 5,000 megawatts to electricity consumers across the Federation. The stranded power that cannot be delivered to homes, offices, and businesses is always blamed on the lack of capacity by the Transmission Company of Nigeria, the TCN. In the power sector value chain, only the TCN was not put up for outright privatization by the Nigerian government in 2013 during the sale of the country's national electricity assets and infrastructure. In recent times, the TCN has reportedly been inaugurating transmission substations across the country with explanations that the infrastructure will improve power supply across the country. However, neither the company nor the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing will tell Nigerians the costs of the multi-billion naira substation projects. We can confirm, though, that in 2018, the Transmission Company of Nigeria has an allocation of 30.640 billion naira in the national budget, out of which 9.681 billion naira is earmarked for counterpart funding for the provision of transmission lines and substations by donor agencies like the World Bank, European Union, China Exim Bank, Africa Development Bank, etc. An additional 658.329 million naira out of the company's budget is allocated for funding of work on the 3 substations of Baraturu in Bayelsa State, Ibozo in Delta State, and Ibiono Ibom in Akwa Ibom State. For 2017, the Nigerian government allocated over 3.087 billion naira for continuous funding of work on 14 substations, most of which construction work started in 2016, when the Transmission Company of Nigeria had a capital vote allocation of 30.398 billion naira in the national budget. In 2015, the country budgeted 535.246 billion naira for capital projects that will be undertaken by the Transmission Company of Nigeria. This was way higher than the 102.45 billion naira budget of the ministry in 2014 that had mobilized $1.5 billion in financing from multilateral sources to invest in the country's transmission network in that particular year and beyond. And in the year 2013, when the national electricity assets were sold to private investors, with the government concentrating on the transmission value chain. The sum of 33.849 billion naira was the total capital vote for the transmission company of Nigeria. Those conversant with the Nigerian electricity industry say the provision of new transmission infrastructure and the upgrading of old facilities will not end the challenges in the transmission value chain until the country adopts what is known as international best practice in the management of the national network grid, which must be decentralized and regionalized to serve clusters of states.
There is need for our sister companies in the distribution to also make effort in their network expansion and rehabilitation. This is necessary to enable the nation optimize its investment in generation and transmission.
So far as the distribution companies are not investing such that they are able to send out these powers to the end users, Nigerians will never appreciate the large volume of money that is being put into power generation. And that is the truth. So we are appealing to the distribution companies to go back to the drawing board. If they know they don't have the financial or the technical wherewithal, let them come out and be sincere and stop frustrating Nigerians and painting government in a bad light.
You have heard of so many projects. Oh, TCN has done this year, TCN has done this year. And Nigerians one day called and asked, all these projects you have been commissioning or you've been enhancing, how much megawatt has it added to the grid? We need to start asking that question, because this issue of megawatt, you and I as Nigerians, we're tired of the name. Megawatt this, megawatt that. What the average Nigerian want to hear is, has my power supply improved? If it has not improved, then it doesn't make sense. It just...
One would think the stations they are commissioning are to take off the load that you generate.
Yes. That is the ideal thing. But if you say that, okay, as of 2012, you had 6,500 megawatt capacity. And with all these projects now, check now, we should be about 12,000 megawatt capacity of transmission. Am I right? Why are we barely taking 53% of 7,005? We should be asking some concrete questions.
It is on record that a number of the 36 states of the Federation have had the dream of investing in power generation with the hope that the electricity projects will end the epileptic supply and, in most cases, perennial blackout in their states. Most of these states now have state ministries of power or energy that are supposed to midwife and supervise the electricity projects. Unfortunately, however, the power generated from each of these state government-owned power plants has to be fed into the infamous national grid network, and the rest is history. You do not get to see the electricity to use in your state thereafter.